Hi folks, this is Eric Bourne with Harrisburg Area Community College, and for this, our last grammar exercise of this semester, I'd like to take an opportunity to pull a lot of our concepts together. What we're going to be doing is working with the ideas of coordination and subordination, two strategies for combining sentences. To wrap up the work we've been doing with improving our sentences, but also to think about how this relates to our process for writing. Let's dive in and let's think about our writing process. Now, I'm talking about all those steps that we take when we are writing an essay. Now, usually when we talk about the writing process, we're thinking about, okay, how am I going to come up with this stuff? I've been sitting staring at my blank screen trying to write this essay and I don't know what to put down. Now, the writing process is great for helping us with this moment, with pre-writing, coming up with ideas, outlining so we can lead into our drafting. Wonderful stuff. What I'd like to do, though, is look at the writing process from a slightly different angle. I'd like to think about how we can plan our writing process to help ourselves avoid grammatical errors. I think we can approach this process in a way to accommodate our weaknesses and play to our strengths. Now, the basic problem here, the reason why the writing process is helpful, is that many errors occur when we try to do all of the steps of the process all at once. And this is true about coming up with ideas, this is true about working with grammar in an essay. If you try to do everything for an essay, come up with ideas, draft it, edit it, revise it, all at the same time. If you're saying to yourself, man, this essay is due tomorrow, I'm just going to sit down and write it, you are basically guaranteeing that you're not going to accomplish any of these tasks as well as you could have otherwise. You're not going to come up with as good of ideas, your draft is not going to be as good, your editing is not going to be to the best of your abilities, your revision is going to be lacking. You can't do all of these things at once. You need to focus on each step and each give its step its own place. So let's think about these steps, these 4 steps we think about the writing process, and let's try to give them their own identity, and we're going to fit in our ideas for grammar along the way in a few key spots. Ordinarily, in thinking about the writing process, we talk about pre-writing, we talk about drafting, editing, and revising. Let's break down these 4 steps. First off, pre-writing. Use a pre-writing activity like brainstorming, free writing, or clustering to help you find ideas. Pre-writing should not be a long process. Sometimes it happens while we're doing other things. Great ideas happen when we let a thought sort of percolate a bit in our mind as we go about our day-to-day activities. But the moment we actually sit down to sketch some things on paper, that typically isn't a long process. You know you're done pre-writing when you have an outline. When you have an outline, you're ready to move on to stage number 2 into drafting. In the drafting stage, you want to focus on content. You want to focus here on saying what you need to say. Now, you can't completely ignore your other writing concerns as you draft. You're going to have to paragraph somehow. You're going to have to communicate ideas together in sentences, so grammar is going to be part of it. What you want to do to help yourself focus on content is to keep those sentences simple. Express your ideas in simple, complete sentences so that you don't have to worry as much about the grammar. Keep things in your comfort zone. Don't try for fancy sentences. Don't try to show off your newfound knowledge of the colon. Just try to get the ideas down on paper in a form that you're confident is correct, if not that dazzling. After your draft is finished, set it aside. I can't emphasize this enough. Editing and revising are basically impossible to do immediately after you draft. You are basically incapable of actually seeing what you wrote immediately after you write something. Go to bed. Look at it the next day. Plan out your writing process so you have that time. Now, your first move is to compare your draft to the requirements of your essay prompt. You want to make sure that you've said the right things. Is it long enough? Have I covered all of the topics my professor wants me to cover? Are these the organization there? Do that before you look at any particular sentence in detail, because you may need to delete or you may need to add based on how your drafting went. When you have everything there that needs to be there, now it's time to think grammar. And here's where we're going to bring in today's idea. You're going to look for places to combine sentences. Since your draft was written in short, complete sentences, there are going to be two things that you're going to want to improve before you turn it in. You want to improve clarity, the connections between your ideas, and you're going to want to improve sentence variety, the way that your essay reads, it's the interest that is developed by having a variety of sentence structures. Now, this idea of sentence combining is what we'll talk in the second half of this presentation. You'll notice that it's built on ideas, though, that we've been working on this semester. It should be familiar, it should be comfortable. Now, to wrap up our writing process discussion, your last step is revising. You've done your editing. Hopefully, probably, you've gotten some help from somebody else. Take advantage of your support communities. Writing Center is a great place. Get their feedback. When you've collected all this feedback, you've asked questions from your professor, you're ready to sit down, work with your draft, and get it polished and ready for turning in. Okay, we've seen that combining sentences is kind of at the heart of this grammar work that I've suggested. This is what's going to make this particular writing process work. You don't want to end up with an essay that's all simple sentences. That wouldn't be clear enough, there wouldn't be enough variety there. However, if you follow this strategy, you should avoid run-on sentences with the first part of your strategy. And if you can connect sentences at this point, if you can look for spots to show your reader how ideas are connected, you will have the professional sounding essay that you want. Now, your two main processes for connecting sentences we call coordination and subordination. I'm sorry those words have more syllables than strictly necessary, and these are going to be familiar things. Let's start with coordination. Coordination is the process of connecting two independent clauses with a comma and a conjunction. Sounds familiar, right? We talked about this strategy for fixing run-on sentences. Run-ons, if you recall, are a sentence with two incorrectly connected independent clauses. We're using the same strategy here. We're just thinking it from the starting point of, hey, I've got these two sentences hanging out beside each other. Their ideas are related. I'm going to connect them in a way that makes that connection more clear. I'm going to use a comma and then a conjunction. You have 7 conjunctions to pick from. Remember your acronym FANBOYS, for and nor, but, or, yet, and so. These are your choices for these situations. They're simple and flexible. For an example, let's say in your essay you've got these two sentences beside each other. My generation tends to spend too much time online. We don't interact with others face to face very often. Now clearly those ideas are related because of the first statement. We know the second one is true. There's this kind of cause-effect thing going on here. So let's grab the word so, put it after a comma, and we'll have that hanging out right in between these two sentences. My generation tends to spend too much online, comma, so we don't interact with others face to face very often. That simple word so has made the connection between these two ideas more clear. We have a better sentence. We have a better structure now than we had before with a very simple strategy. So, a couple writing tips with coordination. Nothing too difficult. First off, remember that your conjunctions have different meanings. Pick the one that best fits the ideas you're connecting. Your basic coordination conjunction is and. It works, but it's the most vague. If you can do better, do better. Remember your punctuation rules. The comma goes before the conjunction. Think of this in your mind as comma and conjunction, and the order of those words will help you remember what goes first. Straightforward, huh? Let's go to the other one, subordination. This one should be similarly familiar, even if it has a couple more, it's a bit more complicated, and we have a couple rules that we need to remember to be successful with it. Nothing you can't accomplish, though. Subordination is our process of connecting two independent clauses using a dependent word. We've been talking about dependent words all semester. We're thinking about words like because, after, if, words that, when they show up in front of a clause, make it dependent. Make it so that it can't stand on its own. It has to be attached to a complete sentence in order for it to be complete. Now, they also are powerful connectors. Let's see an example of this in action. Let's say you have these two sentences by each other in the essay. My generation excels at working in groups. We spend so much time networking. Once again, some clear connections between these two ideas, but let's make them explicit. Let's use the word because. My generation excels at working in groups because we spend so much time networking. That simple word is making the connection between these two ideas so much more clear. We're not leaving our reader to tease it out on their own. It's now explicit in the sentence. We've improved this significantly. Now, some tips to remember about subordination. You might need to dig back into your notes a little bit for a few of these. First off, remember that there's a large number of these. I can't give you a nice little acronym like I could with coordinating conjunctions. You have several charts in your books. Pick the one that best fits your idea. You've got a lot of options. Secondly, remember that your dependent words can be placed in front of either clause. You're not limited to putting them in the middle as you are with the coordinating conjunctions. Third, you may or may not be adding a comma to these sentences. It all depends on the placement of your dependent word. Look up your comma rules for that. When your dependent word is the first word in the sentence, you'll need a comma in the middle. When your dependent word is in the middle of the sentence between the two clauses, there will not be a comma sitting next to it. Alright folks, that's going to wrap us up for the moment. Go find your worksheets, get your notes on there, and try out connecting some sentences. Now we'll pick things up on Friday, dive into the last grammar quiz of the semester.